subject of feminism always brings about much debate due to the myriad of interpretations surrounding the term.
In this project, we will analyze and discuss how new media affects a woman's ability to ascribe herself an identity. Third-wave feminism acts as a guiding theoretical perspective as to whether identities are formed by media espousal or by individuals choosing.
Feminism in its first wave came about from the movement for the right of women to vote. Its second wave came out of the frustrations of the male-dominated movements of the late 1960s, with the women's liberation movement calling for equality in the workplace and reproductive rights. The phase that is now seen of third-wave feminism varies from the previous two in having a specific focus of individual personal empowerment rather than the activism focus that the second wave had. There's a strong emphasis on women's sexuality and not being ashamed of having an active sexual lifestyle and dressing sexually as a means of expressing power and divulging empowerment by flaunting physical attraction. Some maintain that the third wave of feminism is a generational phenomenon comprised of Generation Xers dissatisfied with what they perceive to be the rigidity of morals espoused by the second wave feminist. Others still insist that the third wave of feminism is one and the same with the anti-feminist movement.
The growing mainstream of burlesque and sex workshops for women indicate a strong movement of sexualization being a means of strength. This seems almost an oxymoron in the light of how radical feminists have fought for the de-objectification of women's identities. Robin Morgan vocalized for many groups claiming that pornography was a central underpinning of patriarchy and linked to violence against women. As she summarized, pornography is the theory, rape the practice. Acts of self-representation, therefore, taken out of context, often mirror misogynistic culture.
The irony in this is that the so-called liberal icons of this movement can be seen on TV shows and popular movies such as Sex and the City, The Devil Wears Prada, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Scream, where they are just as much a slave to capitalism as their predecessors were to the norms of patriarchy.
As Hammer and Kellner describe, popular media-marketed feminism became a euphemism for what many feminists describe as lifestyle and sex and shopping.
Catherine Orr describes third-wave feminists as being very vocal and active on feminist issues such as rape, violence against women, economic inequality, and other forms of exploitation of women.
They do not accept the idea that feminism has already eradicated institutional sexism or that the lines between privilege and exploitation based on race, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, physical ability, and body shape have disappeared. Nor do they disregard the need for organized feminist responses to oppressive institutions. Initiatives that are made possible because of new media such as Take Back the Night and Slut Walk have received praise and criticism for their efforts, but acknowledgments nonetheless. As YouTube user Asabo843 says, this whole movement was to show that women can wear whatever they want and still be free of rape. All we want is to be able to walk around and not be harassed. I can wear a t-shirt and jeans and still get harassed. Hell, I can be wearing my military uniform and get harassed. It needs to stop. Even if you're scantily dressed, you're not inviting rape.
Barbie is an example of a master symbol. That is an image that is widely known and carries deep meaning. The contesting over master symbols occurs in the internet discourse, resulting in conflict of meaning. The reproduction of these images reinforces their legitimacy. Barbie reinforces what it is to be female. In a new media system, there is demand for the right for self-determining of your identity. There is the occurrence of feminization of the internet, where the norm of society is established by patriarchy and the right wing is dominant. Mass media are involved in misogyny, while there is a lack of women in male-dominated, owned, and operated institutions. Now there is unleashed female representation via the internet, which doesn't mean women are dominant or uncontested, but it's there. It is not stopped from being represented, since the sexism and friction due to climbing the ladder institutional settings is not an issue. The danger is, however, that the willingness to express voices may be affected by haters, or women will learn and become confident. Less than a decade ago, the sole source of women's and teen magazines involved Good Housekeeping, Parents, and Woman's Day. For teens, there was Teen Beat, Bop, and 17. Those days are gone. The 1995 launch of online magazines, or zines, provided advertisers with a way to reach a new generation of young, affluent consumers who had access to the internet. The insurgence of cheap, fast, and easy publishing on the web also spawned iVillage, one of the most successful online communities for women, while other new websites featured girl zines for the younger woman.
Women could easily move from browsing to shopping to buying what they wanted, all without even having to get dressed.
Underneath this all, new media seemingly gave women exactly what they wanted.
The issue relating to third-wave feminism is that the very idea of identity is not a universal concern, more of a first-world privilege. Women that spend their time battling domestic abuse or worrying about how they are going to feed their children are not focused on discovering their identity.
Other critics argue that third-wave feminism does more harm than good by equating women's sexuality with power.
Critics argue that this kind of sexual empowerment is purely individualistic and does not lead to social change. In fact, it actually promotes the sexualization of women.
Popular culture describes this phenomena as brand new feminism that appears to take gender equity for granted, is more self-obsessed, wed to the culture of celebrity, primarily concerned with sexual self-revelation, and focused on the body rather than social change. Much of what today's emerging woman has formed her identity on is embedded in aspects of popular culture.
Popular culture seems to have returned the favor, as energetic, exhilarated, fresh feminism seems to infuse every aspect of contemporary mass media. The political and social implications for these mass-mediated representations raise important questions for cultural critics.
Do these media depictions actually represent a long-awaited and hard-won mainstreaming of feminism? Or is this media phenomenon actually dangerous for feminism, largely due to the slick conventions used to convey these representations?
Shugart argues that certain tenets of third-wave feminism are appropriated, commodified, reinscribed, and sold back to audiences via a postmodern aesthetic of strategic juxtaposition in such a way that those feminist sensibilities are not only diffused, but ultimately rendered consonant with the dominant paradigm that they appear to resist. Thus, the ultimate function of these mass-mediated representations of third-wave feminism is hegemonic. This was shown in a study done by Shugart, Wagner, and Hallstein, in which they analyzed 3 figures in different areas of popular culture: musician Alanis Morissette, fashion icon Kate Moss, and television character Ally McBeal. In the case of Alanis Morissette, the third-wave socio-political sensibilities of confrontation against sexism and contradiction to society are reinscribed as personalized anger and instability. In Kate Moss's case, the third-wave proclivity for androgyny is repackaged as reification of patriarchal femininity, and the assertive, confident female sexuality that serves as a primary premise for third-wave feminism is co-opted and resold through the character of Ally McBeal as a patriarchal representation of femininity. Often in popular television shows that frame a female protagonist, there seems to be a fulfillment of feminist ideals and accomplishment. However, through the postmodern technique of strategic juxtaposition, potentially liberatory understandings of female sexuality are recontextualized, reinscribed, and sold back to viewers as male-defined, male-oriented, and thus qualified, the exclusive source of female power. As such, patriarchal representations of female sexuality not only remain intact, but are reinforced, such as in the TV show Ally McBeal, in which she says, "I am a strong, working career girl who feels empty without a man." Female characters often have a flagrant use of sexuality as a means of getting what they want, working their way up the corporate ladder via men's libidos.
On the role of the internet as a new type of space for women's voices, Anne Travers notes that while feminists remain largely invisible in the public sphere, they gain new visibility in the counterpublics of the internet. Strangelove describes YouTube as a contested space where people engage in intensely emotional battles over the proper place of women in society.
Come in.
Julia, you needed to see me.
Oh, shit! You have a seat, Dale?
Do I have to?
Dale, you know, I like to fool around at work. So from now on, just tell me when I cross the line.
Now, because you're naked.
Can you see my...
True.
The use of YouTube by women invariably opens up their self-representations for erotic objectification by the male gaze. Strangelove summarizes that these women are empowering themselves by taking pleasure in their bodies and sexualities and presenting this to the YouTube world. Unfortunately, context influences the way women represent themselves and how audiences respond to their voices and bodies, and usually these responses are not empowering. As blogger Alicia Peltier discusses, is YouTube helping women to liberate themselves from a past negative positioning, or is YouTube simply helping women to adopt patriarchal values and putting themselves on display for men? Based on the current path, the latter.
The promise that is found in the growing system of new media is that there is an underlying demand for the right for self-determination of identity. The generation that is upon us uses what is seen in popular culture and applies it to its individual experience of learning to define identity. Thus, the furthering of women's rights may be expedited with the growing fight against institutionalized identity seen across all demographics. With